Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to our channel, Pakistan Zindabad, the next world superpower. We're here for another deep dive where we get into the really complex strategic documents to pull out the insights that really matter.
And today's source is a really significant one. We're working directly from episode 33 of the book, The Nuclear Umbrella, written by Mr. Zahir Ahmad Mir. Specifically, it's from Volume 4, which is titled The Blueprint for Integrated Intelligence and Information Superiority.
Right. And it lays out this incredibly intricate design for an intelligence system.
Exactly. One that's designed to give a decisive advantage to a collective alliance.
So our mission today, for you listening, is pretty clear. We want to understand how a joint intelligence and information architecture, and this is specifically tailored for a multinational alliance, something like a Muslim NATO, is, engineered from the ground up.
And it's engineered to do three specific things: create early warning, establish a shared truth, and ultimately deliver a decision advantage.
Because the blueprint, it says this right up front, the entire strategic landscape has changed. It's not about winning wars with numbers anymore, is it? It's not about just counting tanks or troops.
Well, no, not at all. Wars today are fundamentally won or lost based on the quality and the speed of your information. That's the paradigm.
So information dominance gives you that maneuver space.
It does, and that translates directly into political and military success. The whole point of this blueprint is to take all that raw, messy, disparate data and turn it into a decisive edge.
To make sure you're always acting faster than your opponent can even think.
We're operating inside their decision cycle. That's the goal.
Okay, so let's unpack the core problem, the foundational flaw that this whole, very complex architecture is designed to fix. If you look back at pretty much any major strategic failure, any surprise attack in modern history, there's always the same pattern, isn't there?
Always.
Someone, somewhere, saw a sign, a piece of the puzzle, but those signs were never connected.
The data was there. It always is. But the crucial step, that leap from data to actionable intelligence, it just never happened.
It died in a silo.
It died in a silo. And that failure is the single most dangerous vulnerability for any group of allies. So this architecture, it's designed to mandate integration.
It does that in two ways.
Two essential channels, yes. First, horizontally. That means across all the different sovereign member states, making sure data can flow seamlessly between them.
Okay, that makes sense. But the second one, that's the one that seems like the bigger challenge. Vertically.
It often is, yes. It's a huge technical and, frankly, bureaucratic challenge.
Tell me a bit more about what that vertical integration actually means in practice.
Vertical integration is about making sure information can move friction-free from the lowest level sensor. We're talking about a UAV camera, a single agent on the ground, an intercepted digital packet.
Right, the tactical level.
The absolute tactical level, all the way up to the highest level decision makers. The field commanders, government ministers, even heads of state. It has to bridge the tactical and the strategic.
So if a soldier on the ground sees something critical,
that piece of information, analyzed and with context, needs to be on the president's desk in minutes, not hours, and definitely not days. The system has to guarantee that speed and that contextualization.
So before we get to the solution, the architecture itself, we really have to understand the depth of the current problem. Let's dig into what the source material calls out as the systemic vulnerabilities. Part 1, why fragmented intelligence fails.
And we have to start with the immediate, unavoidable consequence of getting this wrong.
Which is?
Late warnings, poor decisions, and crises that were completely avoidable. Strategic failure is basically guaranteed when your intelligence handling is poor. The blueprint, it details 5 specific, persistent problems across the relevant regional systems.
And the first one is the absolute classic intelligence problem, isn't it? Siloed agencies. We hear that term all the time, but what does it actually mean on the ground? How does it create these blind spots?
Well, siloed agencies means information isn't just physically in different buildings. It's institutionally guarded. It's protected.
And it's mine, not ours.
Yes, exactly. An intelligence report gets collected, and it's immediately locked down within the boundaries of a single national agency or even a department within that agency. And this isn't just, inefficient. It is strategically crippling.
Can you give me an example of that?
Sure. Think about it like this. Agency A might be tracking a suspicious financial transfer. At the same time, Agency B is tracking a weird spike in communications. And Agency C has a single human source, an agent, reporting some unusual activity over in a border region.
Right.
Individually, what are those? They're just noise. They're low-grade indicators that probably don't mean much on their own. But as long as they stay siloed, the pattern, the real signal, never, ever emerges.
And the adversary is counting on that. They exploit those gaps between the institutions.
That's their entire strategy. Which leads us right into the second big issue, delayed sharing. Speed is absolutely everything in a modern conflict, but bureaucracy, well, bureaucracy is the natural enemy of speed.
It's designed to be slow.
It is. The time lag between when data is collected and when it becomes something you can act on is critical. If your process for sharing data, especially the really sensitive stuff, requires 5 layers of bureaucratic clearance, a bunch of political sign-offs, or, God forbid, manual file transfer,
By the time it gets anywhere, it's useless.
it ages into history before it ever becomes intelligence. Think about a tactical threat, like a hostile force getting ready to strike. The window to do something about that might just be a few hours.
Or even minutes.
Or minutes. An intelligence system that works on a 48-hour approval cycle isn't just useless, it's actually worse than useless. It gives you the illusion of being aware without any of the substance.
And that delay, that's often made even worse by the third vulnerability the blueprint points out.
Yeah.
Incompatible systems. This is where the raw technical hurdles just seem immense.
Oh, they are. This is a massive and incredibly costly challenge, especially when you're talking about nations that all develop their own tech infrastructure completely independently over decades.
So what does that look like? Different software.
It's everything. We're talking about totally incompatible technical architectures, different data standards, varying encryption methods, even database languages that just flat out don't talk to each other.
So even if the political will is there to share.
Even with the best will in the world, if State A's imagery software can't be read by State B's command system, what do? You have to resort to manual translation, reformatting the data, sometimes even printing things out.
You're kidding. Printing it.
It happens. You introduce this physical friction that absolutely kills speed and volume. It's like trying to build a collective digital brain where all the individual neurons speak different languages and run on different voltages.
That technical friction alone feels like enough to sink the whole effort. But you also mentioned the human elements, which, they tend to be even more destructive. The fourth point is mistrust and politicization.
And this is, you could argue, the most corrosive failure of all. Intelligence is supposed to be the objective truth, right? It's supposed to be completely divorced from any national preference or political agenda.
Supposed to be.
Supposed to be. But if political dynamics or old historical grievances or just internal political games start to interfere, the analysis itself becomes corrupted.
Leaders want to hear what they want to hear.
They prefer comfortable lies over uncomfortable truths. So what happens? The analysts start to self-censor. Or worse, the analysis is deliberately shaped to fit a pre-approved political narrative instead of reflecting what the data actually says.
And once that trust in the objectivity of the information breaks down, everyone just goes back to hoarding their own data.
Exactly. It completely breaks the system. Leaders start hoarding information again, and you revert right back to the siloed behavior the architecture was trying to fix in the first place.
So a perfect technical system can still fail completely if the human element refuses to engage honestly with the truth.
And that internal fragmentation, that mistrust, it leads you straight to the final strategic failure, over-reliance on external feeds.
What do you mean by that?
Well, because the national systems are fragmented, they're expensive to maintain, and they're often politically compromised, the member states find themselves becoming dependent on non-member states for their critical threat data.
And those non-member states are often larger global powers.
Or sometimes even rivals. Or states with completely different conflicting interests.
Which means, what's the strategic implication?
It means you are strategically blind until someone else decides to turn on the light for you. Your priorities are dictated by what they choose to share. And that data, it might be filtered, it might be delayed, or it could even be deliberately misleading to serve the provider's interests, not yours.
So the Ummah, the collective, it loses its strategic independence. It loses the ability to define and deal with its own threats on its own timeline.
That's the core of it. The unifying theme here is that fragmentation, doesn't matter if it's technical, political, or bureaucratic, it creates strategic vulnerability. It puts the entire collective at a permanent disadvantage.
So the failures demand a unified approach, one that's based not on optimistic goodwill, but on rigorously designed protocols and certainties.
Precisely. The architecture has to engineer a system where cooperation is technically and legally safer and more beneficial than isolation.
Okay, that brings us perfectly to the core solution designed to fix these 5 failures. Part 2, the Joint Intelligence Fusion Center, or the JIFC. This is the nucleus of the whole thing.
It is. The JIFC is the physical and the digital core. The blueprint imagines it as a highly secure, Pakistan-hosted core structure.
And why is that centralization so important?
It's crucial for a few reasons. It lets you establish common standards for everyone, uniform security protocols, and it's where you house the really high-performance computing that you need for genuine fusion. But, and this is important, it's not a monolith.
It's not just one big building.
No, it's supported by critical regional nodes, and those nodes handle the localized collections, some of the initial processing, and then the tailored distribution of intelligence back out to the members in that region.
That structure seems vital. So the core gives you coherence and massive computing power, but the regional nodes give you resilience and responsiveness to local issues.
You've got it. But the primary function, the fusion mandate, that's what turns this from just a data storage facility into a real strategic asset.
So what does that genuine fusion actually look like?
Genuine fusion means you are doing a simultaneous, structured synthesis of all 5 major intelligence disciplines into one single coherent assessment. It's not just, stapling 5 different reports together. It's merging them into one story.
So the JFC is designed to do that cross-correlation.
Constantly. For example, a piece of information from an agent on the ground that's human is immediately checked against visual confirmation from a satellite IMINT.
Okay.
That visual is then cross-referenced with any unusual communications intercept SIGINT. All of this is then filtered through an AI analysis of public data ascent to see if there are, say, financial flows or media narratives that match up.
And the last piece.
And finally, the system checks for any parallel digital activity, any cyber footprints detected by cyber intelligence, or CWIBINT.
So an anomaly in one domain, like a single weird communication spike, it's just noise. But the fusion process can either validate it or deny it using 3 other streams, and that's what turns it into actionable intelligence.
Precisely. And the outcome of all that constant high-speed fusion is the single common operating picture, the SCOP. This is the non-negotiable goal of the entire system.
The SCOP is often called the holy grail of this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Can you explain its strategic value beyond just, everyone sharing the same map?
The SCOP is the guarantee of shared truth. It means every single decision maker, from the frontline commander in the field all the way up to the Strategic Planning Council, is looking at the exact same, constantly updated, verified assessment of what's happening.
And that shared truth, it also acts as a defense mechanism.
A critical one. The SCOP serves as a collective denial of deception. If an adversary tries to plant false information, maybe through a social media campaign or a controlled human source, the other fused data streams, imagery, signals, cyber will instantly flag the deception. They'll reveal the inconsistency.
So shared truth prevents confusion, it stops redundant analysis, and it makes all the strategic decisions just align naturally.
Yes. But once you have that shared truth, how do you make sure it leads to timely action? How does the JIFC avoid just flooding commanders with low-priority noise?
Alarm fatigue.
Exactly. They use a system of rigorous alert grading and distribution. Alerts are systematically graded based on their urgency, their scope, and their potential impact. This classification ensures that leaders know instantly if they're getting a 5-minute warning or a 5-year projection.
So you could have different levels, like strategic, operational.
That's right. Strategic alerts would be those long-term, high-impact analyses. Things like warning of shifts in global trade or deep economic trends or major geopolitical realignments over the next 5 to 10 years. These are for long-range policy.
Okay, then what's next on the ladder?
Then you have operational alerts. These are about things happening within the next, say, 72 hours. A major troop buildup on a border, large-scale financial warfare, significant regional instability. These drive force posture and readiness levels.
And the most urgent.
Those are the tactical alerts. These demand an immediate specific response. An imminent missile launch, a cross-border terror infiltration, a critical intrusion into a power grid. These require immediate intervention, and they get pushed directly to the relevant command units.
The grading system prevents that alarm fatigue and makes sure that when that highest grade alert comes through, everyone knows to stop what they're doing.
Absolutely. And all of this, its entire effectiveness, it all depends on maintaining trust. Which brings us to what is maybe the most complex principle in the whole blueprint, the trust principle, compartmentalization.
Right. This is the core tension of any alliance, isn't it? How do I contribute my most sensitive, nationally protected secrets to a shared pot without being terrified that my allies, who could be my rivals tomorrow, will learn how I got them?
And the JIFC blueprint attacks that problem head-on by ensuring that trust isn't just assumed. It has to be engineered.
Engineered trust.
Yes. And the foundational principle is this: share outcomes, not sources. Compartmentalization is the physical, the technical, and the procedural scaffolding that is built to uphold that promise.
Okay, walk me through the mechanics of that. Let's say State A submits some raw SIGINT data. How is the source, how they got it, protected from the analysts from State B?
It's done through very strict technical segregation and protocol. When State A submits that raw data, say a specific communication intercept, the JIFC processes it through a dedicated, highly cleared fusion team. Their access is incredibly restricted.
So what gets shared with the wider network?
The output that's shared across the whole network is not the raw intercept itself, and it's definitely not the method they use to capture it or decrypt it. The shared output is the metadata of the finding.
Can you give me an example of what that looks like?
Sure. It might be something like specific command and control communications have ceased activity at coordinates XY for the last 12 hours, indicating a high probability of asset movement.
I see. So the what, but not the how.
Exactly. The originating asset, the specific national satellite or the unique decryption method, is masked. It's logged, but it's only seen by a tiny circle of senior JIFC security oversight personnel.
So if State A has some, I don't know, proprietary decryption algorithm they spent billions on, they can contribute the result of that algorithm. But the other allies only ever get the final validated intelligence nugget, never the key that unlocks it.
That is the strategic bargain. Every state has to contribute to the shared truth, but the lifeblood of their national intelligence capabilities, their methods, their sources, their assets, they remain protected.
And that's what makes cooperation palatable, even when there's historical mistrust. It guarantees national sovereignty over how you collect, while mandating shared responsibility for the outcome.
You've nailed it. That distinction between outcome and source is the absolute linchpin of the entire system.
That makes a lot of sense. Now let's look at how the individual nations actually pool their expertise. Part 3 covers the intelligence domains and the division of labor.
Right, so we're shifting from the structure to the actual capabilities. The guiding principle here is what the blueprint calls the strategic contribution model, meaning no state is forced to duplicate effort or give up its existing strengths. Instead, each state is encouraged to contribute where they are already strong, based on their regional expertise, their technical history, or, linguistic specializations. The collective superiority comes from that synergy.
Okay, let's start with the classic, human or human intelligence. In a system like this, how on earth do you pool agents and networks without creating massive security risks for them?
You don't pool the agents themselves. The focus is on integrating the output of what the blueprint calls regionally anchored and culturally fluent networks.
So it's about the unique value that human provides.
It is. Human provides the cultural context, the why, that signals and imagery so often miss. To understand tribal dynamics or internal political games or niche dialects in a specific region, you need locally sourced, culturally sensitive agents. The GIFC doesn't manage the agent. It manages the rapid and, very importantly, sanitized flow of that agent's reporting.
So a critical insight from, say, a Turkish or an Egyptian agent in their specific area immediately informs the security of all the other members.
It creates a mosaic of unparalleled local knowledge across the entire collective.
That local knowledge gives you the necessary depth. Okay, next up is SIGINT, Signals Intelligence. This is the domain that always seems to require the most technical and financial muscle.
Oh, it does. SIGINT is defined by one thing: volume. Global communications streams, satellite, internet, radio, they generate terabytes, petabytes of data every single day.
And for many developing nations, just maintaining the infrastructure for that is a huge burden.
It's an immense economic and technical burden. So the blueprint mandates a shared intercept standard and, even more critically, pooled processing capabilities.
How did that pooling work in practice? Are we talking about one giant supercomputer?
It means you distribute the massive analysis load. You'd have specialized supercomputing centers, maybe one is centrally hosted and others are distributed among states that already have the infrastructure. And these centers are dedicated to cracking encryption, performing traffic analysis, and using AI to sift through all that noise.
It's also about pooling human talent, I assume.
A huge part of it. The Alliance pools its specialized linguistic analysts, those incredibly rare experts in a niche dialect or some highly specific technical communication. This gives you efficiency gains that no single nation could ever afford on its own.
So you're distributing the cost and the capability. You're turning a national liability into a collective strategic advantage, filling in those gaps in language or technology instantly.
It's all about efficiency through collaboration.
So when we look up from the signals, we hit IMNT, imagery intelligence. How does the system guarantee the rapid, unbiased exchange of satellite and UAV data?
This domain is all about direct, immediate exchange of satellite and UAV imagery. The core challenge here is real-time access.
Right, a crisis is unfolding. You can't wait for a formal request process.
Exactly. If a member state satellite is passing over a critical target zone right now, that high-resolution imagery can't sit in a queue. It has to be instantly accessible and merged into the SKP. So the JFC architecture mandates the technical compatibility and the secure transfer protocols to just eliminate those bureaucratic delays.
You're creating a single collective eye in the sky.
That's the idea.
Okay, moving to the digital threat space, we have CYBINT, cyber intelligence. This feels like the area where the threats are evolving the fastest.
They absolutely are. So the system creates these specialized operational units. You'd have a malware analysis cell, an intrusion detection cell, and a rapid attribution cell.
And that rapid attribution seems paramount in modern digital conflicts. You have to know who hit you.
You have to know within hours, not weeks. A state-sponsored attack on critical infrastructure, a power grid, a financial network, a defense system. You have to identify it, halt it, and attribute it, who did it, how, and why, almost immediately.
And that requires a level of expertise it's hard for any single country to maintain.
It's a huge burden. You need dedicated, highly trained experts who are constantly tracking zero-day exploits and evolving threat vectors. By pooling these specialized cyber teams, you create a defensive perimeter that is adaptive and unified and far stronger than any individual members.
And that brings us to the final domain, the one that uses just the sheer noise of the modern world. OSINT. Open source intelligence. This is about using public information for military advantage.
And OSINT isn't just, reading the newspaper anymore, not by a long shot. It's about leveraging AI-assisted analysis to process massive, disparate data streams that are publicly available but are just completely overwhelming for a human analyst to handle.
What kind of streams are we talking about here?
Think about everything. Global media, academic papers, financial transaction records, customs and shipping manifests, huge social media data sets. Modern tech can turn that sheer volume of public data into an incredible strategic asset.
Can you give me a concrete example of that AI-assisted analysis in action?
Absolutely. Take shipping manifests. The AI algorithms in the OSINT cell would be constantly monitoring global shipping records for anything anomalous.
Like what?
A sudden, massive purchase of specialized aluminum piping from a company that doesn't normally sell it, or unusual financial wire transfers routed through a web of shell corporations to buy high-tolerance components that you'd need for missile guidance systems.
Yeah.
These are the flags.
Individually, they're invisible in the noise.
Completely invisible. But the AI connects these disparate global commercial data points and flags them for a human to review. And very often, that provides the absolute earliest warning signal of a strategic procurement shift, sometimes months before any physical construction could be spotted by a satellite.
So the division of labor lets individual national strengths, whether it's deep human networks in one country or sophisticated SIGINT hardware in another, it lets them all pool together into a collective superiority that's resilient, comprehensive, and scalable.
The synergy is the key. It makes the collective capability vastly greater than the sum of its parts.
But, and this is a big but, this incredibly complex, multinational model has to be a very tempting target. It inherently creates these huge vulnerabilities, which moves us to part 4, counterintelligence and the trust framework.
Yes. The source material is very direct about this. It acknowledges that this level of integration demands a rigorous internal defense.
This is that essential acknowledgement again. Trust isn't just a feeling in this system. It has to be engineered with concrete, enforceable mechanisms.
That's right, because when you connect 5 complex national intelligence domains, you're creating a digital nexus that hostile powers will target relentlessly, either from the outside or by trying to exploit internal vulnerabilities.
So how do you engineer that trust? Let's start with the people who are actually running the system.
You have to start with uniformity, standardized vetting and clearances. A system like this is only as secure as its weakest link.
So if one member state has a less rigorous background check process,
That nation becomes the back door for infiltration. So the JIFC mandates a unified baseline for personnel access. It ensures that every single person granted entry, regardless of their nationality, meets the absolute highest required clearance levels that the alliance agrees upon.
and that uniform standard, it removes the political excuse for denying someone access while also mitigating the security risk.
Correct. Knowing who you let into the vault is step 1. Step 2 is constantly testing the vault itself. How do you continuously verify the technical integrity of this whole network?
Okay.
Through a very aggressive approach called red team penetration testing. This is not passive, it's not a checklist, it's an active, simulated war against your own system.
So you're hacking yourself.
Constantly. You have internal or contracted teams whose only job is to try and exploit every single perceived vulnerability. Technical loopholes, procedural failures, even the psychological manipulation of personnel. They simulate state-level threat actors trying to breach data stores, compromise the SPOP, or feed false intelligence into the system.
And that constant pressure testing forces real-time improvements rather than, waiting for a real disaster to happen.
It ensures the security posture is proactively proven, not just assumed.
That proactive defense confirms the resilience. But I have to ask a critical question here. The blueprint also calls for insider threat detection, which involves continuous monitoring of personnel access and behavior.
It does.
Doesn't that create a massive morale problem? I mean, if your own analysts feel like they're constantly being watched and distrusted, won't they just go back to hoarding sensitive data because they're afraid of flagging some anomaly? Won't that defeat the entire purpose of fusion?
That is the absolute core friction point of engineered trust. It's the dilemma between transparency and security, and the blueprint acknowledges this risk.
So how does it propose to manage that?
The insider threat detection system, it's designed not just to detect active espionage, but also to identify vulnerability. Someone being blackmailed, someone in severe financial distress, or someone showing sudden, drastic ideological shifts. The protocols have to be incredibly clear. The monitoring is focused on anomalous digital behavior.
For
example, someone trying to access data that's far outside their clearance level, or making massive unscheduled downloads, or running very specific search queries that don't match their duties. It's meant to trigger an alert for intervention, maybe a conversation with the security officer, not immediate punishment.
So it requires a culture of reporting vulnerabilities, not just enforcing rules.
It has to. You have to find that balance between maintaining confidence in the security of the system without chilling the necessary sharing of information that makes the system work in the first place. It's a huge diplomatic and psychological challenge.
As much as a technical one. Okay, last point on this. If two cooperating states suspect a violation of the rules, like the compartmentalization principle, who's the referee? Who judges?
You need an impartial one. This is handled by a mechanism for third-party rule enforcement. This establishes impartial oversight and adjudication.
So if State A thinks State B is trying to reverse engineer one of their protected human sources from the metadata,
a mechanism has to exist within the JIFC framework that is outside the direct political control of either of those two parties. This would likely be a joint committee. It would be made up of highly respected, politically neutral security experts from non-contributing member states, or technical experts whose primary loyalty is to the JIFC's rules, not their home country.
the diplomatic pressure on that third-party body must be absolutely immense, given the kinds of secrets they'd be dealing with.
It would be the ultimate test of the alliance's commitment to the blueprint itself. That enforcement body has to have the technical chops to investigate breaches forensically and, crucially, the political clout to enforce consequences.
Consequences like what?
It could even include temporarily suspending a nation's access to the JIFC. That's what it takes to guarantee the rules are maintained without political favoritism. If that enforcement is ever seen as biased, the whole system collapses right back into national silos overnight.
That engineered trust really is the foundation for everything else. Okay, let's pivot now to a different domain of conflict. If the technical structure is secure, we now have to focus on where so much of modern strategic warfare is actually fought in the court of public opinion. Part 5, Information Operations and Narrative Control.
The source material is very clear on this. Intelligence superiority has to extend beyond just identifying kinetic threats. You have to be able to manage the narrative space. So the system requires a dedicated operational structure for this, and that's the Strategic Communications Cell, or the SCC.
Is the SEC really an offensive and defensive military asset? Or is it more like a high-level public relations office?
Oh, it's absolutely a strategic warfare component. It's fully integrated into the intelligence cycle. Its operations are driven directly by the fused intelligence coming out of the JFC, especially from CBUNT, which can identify the vectors of a disinformation campaign, and OSINT, which can track how hostile narratives are spreading.
So let's detail the core functions of this SEC, starting with the defensive side.
First and foremost, its job is countering disinformation campaigns that are directed against the member states. When the JFC identifies a coordinated, state-sponsored narrative attack that's designed to destabilize a government or incite internal conflict, the SEC has to deploy counter-messaging immediately.
And that requires speed and precision, guided by intelligence.
Yes. It's not just about denying the claim, it's about using the vetted facts from the JIC to dismantle the entire underlying premise of the attack.
Okay, the second function mentioned is a bit more specialized. Exposing acts of lawfare and propaganda. That concept, lawfare, is really interesting.
Lawfare, in this context, means weaponizing legal systems and international bodies against a strategic rival. For example, a coordinated diplomatic campaign that uses selectively framed human rights reports to justify sanctions.
Or using international financial regulators to apply economic pressure.
Exactly. Or misusing international courts to tie up an opponent's resources and just damage their reputation on the world stage. The SEC, fed by intelligence that details the source and the funding of these campaigns, has to expose these maneuvers with documented, undeniable evidence to neutralize their strategic effect.
So it's about fighting non-kinetic warfare, using facts derived from intelligence.
It is. It elevates the threat analysis from bombs and bullets to courtrooms and financial sanctions.
What's the third function?
It's the essential internal defense role, coordinating crisis messaging with speed and accuracy. When a major incident happens, kinetic, cyber, whatever, the absence of a unified, immediate, and credible narrative creates a vacuum.
And adversaries will always rush to fill that vacuum with panic, speculation, and their own hostile version of events.
They always do. So the SEC uses that single shared truth, the SCOP, to disseminate a coherent and timely message across all the member nations, which prevents that internal confusion from taking root.
And the final function is about ensuring resilience across the populace.
Yes, it's the mandate to protect and maintain public morale across the collective population, the Ummah. At its heart, information superiority is about maintaining faith in the collective mission and ensuring that society is resilient against those demoralizing attacks that aim to sow distrust between leaders and citizens, or between the allied nations themselves.
So, if the JISC is the eyes and the brain of the operation, the SEC is the voice and the shield, what are the key assets, the weapons of this narrative control?
The source identifies what it calls the indispensable triumvirate: truth, speed, and credibility.
Okay, break that down.
Truth provides the foundation. You just can't win a long-term information war with lies. Speed ensures you get to define the conversation before your adversary can solidify their narrative. And credibility, which is derived from the unified, rigorously vetted intelligence from the JIFC, ensures that when the SEC speaks, the message resonates, it sticks, and it's trusted by the public. And that makes adversarial propaganda ineffective.
This moves the whole concept of intelligence fusion into a sphere of strategic narrative warfare. It makes it so much more powerful than just simple military coordination. Okay, let's take this abstract blueprint and make it concrete. Part 6 details some crisis scenarios, showing the integrated system in action.
Yes, these 3 scenarios are designed to illustrate how the system generates that actionable time advantage, that critical space between recognizing a threat and being able to respond to it.
Let's start with Scenario A, surprise missile preparation detection. How does this integrated system spot preparatory activity that 3 independent national systems might just dismiss as noise?
The power is in the integrated signal. It's the convergence of those disparate data types. National systems miss this because they categorize the information as low priority within their own domain. It starts with OSINT.
Okay, Signal 1.
Signal 1. Okay. The JIFC's financial intelligence cells flag financial anomalies. It could be a sudden, large purchase of specialized gyroscope components or specific chemicals routed through a non-traditional logistics firm. This is the first and often the weakest signal.
But it's enough to trigger something else.
It is. That financial flag triggers a prioritized collection task for the IMNT assets. Signal 2, IMNT. Satellite or UAV imagery confirms new infrastructure construction, maybe new hardened access bunkers or specific trenching for communications lines at a known facility in the same region as the financial anomaly.
And the final piece of the puzzle.
Signal 3, SIGINT. Simultaneously, the SIGINT assets detect a sharp spike in unusual communications traffic. Maybe the activation of secure short-burst command and control channels or specific encryption protocols that have previously been linked to launch commands.
So that combination, the money, the pictures, and the chatter, that is the fused signal. It transforms 3 separate pieces of noise into a single, high-grade strategic alert.
That's it. The JIFC immediately triggers a Grade A tactical alert. The response is coordinated and immediate. The SEC starts preparing public messaging, the diplomacy cells engage international partners, and the member nations execute a rapid defensive posture shift, repositioning air and naval assets.
And crucially, the system gave them enough time for non-kinetic action.
Exactly. They have time for preventive diplomacy to defuse the situation, or at least delay the preparation, and they successfully avoid military escalation entirely.
That is the ultimate goal of early warning, isn't it? To avoid the war by preempting the move. Okay, next let's look at scenario B, a hybrid attack. Cyber plus media. This is the modern dual threat. Digital disruption and narrative warfare.
The threat here is perfectly coordinated. You have a simultaneous digital intrusion targeting, let's say, a member state's central banking system. And at the exact same time, a synchronized media smear campaign is launched across global news outlets and social media, aimed at triggering a bank run or even a political collapse.
The system has to counter both at once. Where does the JIFC even start?
It starts with rapid attribution by those specialized CY-bent cells. Their first job is to isolate the malware, trace the command and control channels, and identify the country or the actor responsible for that digital intrusion. And they have to do it in hours.
And that attribution is the critical piece of intelligence. It's what separates an accident from an act of state aggression.
Precisely. And while the technical teams are working on containing the digital threat, that media attack is spreading like wildfire.
Right.
The absolute moment that attribution occurs, the finding is immediately fed to the SEC. The SEC then launches synchronized counter-messaging. They leverage the credibility of the JIFC's verified technical findings to publicly debunk the media smear campaign. For example, by releasing forensic evidence showing the intrusion came from specific servers or IPs linked to the actor they've attributed it to. That neutralizes the narrative effect, while the technical teams are executing the cyber containment, isolating the malware, and patching the vulnerability. The speed of that fusion dictates the success of the entire defense.
Okay, our final scenario, scenario C, a terror plot across borders. This really tests the horizontal integration of what is probably the most sensitive domain, human intelligence.
This one starts with a primary human lead. A regional agent operating in a highly sensitive local context identifies a credible plot. And this plot involved individuals and materials moving across 3 different member states.
Now, if this were a national silo system, that information would probably die right there because of concerns over protecting the source.
Almost certainly. But in the integrated JIFC architecture, how do you safely weaponize that sensitive local information for the whole collective? The human lead is immediately submitted to the JIFC. Internal protocols sanitize it, they strip out any specific reference to the agent's identity, their location, their methods, and they transform it into a shared watch list and an intelligence dossier that's distributed across the secure network.
Meaning that border security, airports, and internal security services in every member state get the same actionable threat profile at the same time.
Instantly. And the result?
Coordinated action.
Coordinated action based on shared knowledge. Because all the relevant security services are operating from the same SCOP, they can execute coordinated arrests in multiple countries almost simultaneously. They dismantle the plot before it can ever be executed.
The efficiency gain there is just staggering. Taking one localized, sensitive snippet of human and turning it into a multinational prevention success. It proves the architecture works under pressure.
It demonstrates that the value of this blueprint isn't just in collecting more data. It's in establishing the mechanisms, the protocols, the tech standards, the trust framework that guarantee the right piece of information gets to the right person at the right time, regardless of national borders.
That brings us to the conclusion of this deep dive. And the source material, it really delivers a very simple but strategically profound truth that's distilled from this entire architecture.
The ultimate synthesis of this blueprint is that those who see first, decide first, and prevail. This intelligence integration for a Muslim NATO, it's designed to move the collective from a reactive, defensive posture, always responding to what the adversary does, to a proactive, strategically clear position where they dictate the tempo and they seize the initiative.
It restores strategic clarity to the Ummah.
That's the goal.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? What's the final essential takeaway from the ambition of this blueprint?
I think the true value is structural. It's not just about collecting information. National agencies are already trying to do that. The immense value here is in establishing the necessary relationships and protocols. That's the legal, the procedural, and the technical scaffolding that guarantee a critical piece of information never gets siloed or deliberately suppressed again.
It's a framework for mandatory, rigorous cooperation.
And it's built on enforceable rules, not just on political goodwill or the convenience of a temporary alliance.
That is a critical distinction. Structure over sentiment.
So this brings us to our final provocative thought for you to consider. If the greatest operational vulnerability the JIFC faces is mistrust among the cooperating nations, especially around exposing sources, how much harder is the engineering trust phase? Standardizing vetting, creating that impartial third-party enforcement body. How does that compare to the purely technical challenges of integrating 5 vast, highly complex intelligence domains? And what unexpected friction points, maybe driven by the internal domestic politics inside the member states, might pop up when you try to translate this detailed blueprint into complex, real-world, high-stakes international cooperation?
A question that forces us to move beyond algorithms and into the realm of high-stakes diplomacy and really political survival.
Absolutely.
Indeed. We look forward to hearing your thoughts on that one. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the architecture of information superiority.
Until next time.